Sunday chapel, so welcome to Homecoming Week. As we get started, I just want to kind of make sure that we're all pretty clear. So we're obviously here. We're going to have chapel today. We have Stewardship Day on Wednesday. If you have any questions about whether you're supposed to go to your stewardship meeting place, whether you're meeting in the parking lot, whether you're supposed to load a certain bus, we do not have an organized meeting time for our faith packs between now and Wednesday, but those would be great questions to ask your faith pack leader sometime between now and then. So if that's something that you're a little bit unclear about, just communicate with your faith pack leader. So that will be on Wednesday. Usually we have chapel on Thursdays. We will not. We're not running our block schedules this week. So on Thursday, we are going to run a schedule very similar today, and the activity period will be an activity, all right? And then Friday, we will be back in here. We're gonna run an activity schedule to allow us to have another chapel. So we're gonna kind of bookend the week. We're gonna start with chapel, we're gonna end chapel, and we would like you to sit with your faith packs for those chapels. We're gonna have a pep rally on Friday afternoon, and then you don't have to sit with your faith pack. A lot of times seniors kind of take the front and center, best seats in the house, and then we'll just gather for that pep rally. So I think that kind of sets this week in place for you. We have a fantastic chapel ready to unfold right in front of us, but I would love to open this chapel and also this week in a word of prayer. Will you join me? Dear Father in heaven, this is the day that you have made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Let us have a day of fun, of laughter, of joy, but in all of it, Lord, show us how to honor and glorify you in every day of our lives. We thank you for homecoming. It's an opportunity to look back at all the different ways that you have blessed and walked alongside Western Christian for over 100 years. But it's also a day to look forward. Give us vision, Lord, to look ahead and to be young men and young women who want to continue figuring out how to love you and to love others as you have called us to do. Thank you for our special number today. Thank you for people who write songs about your truth, and thank you for people who then share those songs with us. Thank you for our speaker. Thank you that he loves Western enough to come back and share a message. And thank you that he loves you, that he desires to serve you every single day of his life. We pray that you bless both our singer and our speaker in this chapel. We dedicate this day to you. In Jesus' name, amen. It is my pleasure to introduce Miss Sydney Feenstra. Cindy's going to share a song. I really want you to let the words of Sydney's song impact you. The world is screaming at us about who we are and what we are, and Sydney's song's going to remind us of God's truth. So please join me in welcoming Miss Sydney Feenstra.
How many times can you hear the same lie before you start to believe it? The enemy keeps whispering to me, swear these days it's all I'm hearing. I used to know who I was, now I look in the mirror and I'm not so sure. Lord, I don't want to listen to the lies anymore. The truth is I am my Father's child. I make him proud and I make him smile. I was made in the image of a perfect king. He looks at me and wouldn't change a thing. The truth is I am truly loved by a God who's good when I'm not good enough. I don't belong to the lies, I belong to you. And that's the truth. When I feel like there's so much noise living rent-free in my head, heaven finds me in a still small voice and it sounds like grace instead. You remind me who I am when I look in the mirror and I'm not so sure. Lord, I don't want to listen to the lies anymore. The truth is I am my Father's child. I make him proud and I make him smile. I was made in the image of a perfect king. He looks at me and wouldn't change a thing. The truth is I am truly loved by a God who's good when I'm not good enough. I don't belong to the lies, I belong to you. And that's the truth. I know who I am, 'cause I know who you are. And I hold your truth inside of my heart. I know that lies are always gonna try and find me, but I've never been so sure. The truth is I am my Father's child. I make him proud and I make him smile. I was made in the image of a perfect king. He looks at me and wouldn't change a thing. The truth is I am truly loved by a God who's good when I'm not good enough. I don't belong to the lies, I belong to you. And that's the truth. And that's the truth.
Thank you, Sydney, for that powerful reminder of truth. Thank you for blessing us. It is now my privilege to welcome Mr. Ross Dauma to speak at our homecoming chapel this morning. Ross is a 1990 graduate of Western Christian. Ross and his wife, Shawn, had 3 children who attended and graduated from here. Dustin, who is with us today, Erica, and most recently Caleb, who graduated last year. This year marks 30 years in education. Congratulations, Ross, 30 years in education. And he has served as a teacher and coach in Iowa, Chicago, and now is the president of school at Avail Academy in Minneapolis. Ross holds a master's degree from Governor's State in Illinois and a doctorate from the University of South Dakota. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ross Dauma back to Western Christian.
I was able to speak in front of the Western student body. It was Fall of 1986, I was a freshman at that time. I had a high, squeaky voice. I had not yet gone through puberty. I wore a mullet at that time because that's what we guys did in the 1980s. And I think looking back, I would say I had some social challenges. But in those days, each grade was responsible for hosting chapel on a rotating basis. And our advisor at that time, our class advisor, was Mr. Hospers. And Mr. Hospers asked me to speak in chapel. I respectfully declined. Some of the older kids informed me at that time that you don't say no to Mr. Hospers. It was not a good move to do that. And later I came to really love and appreciate all that Mr. Hospers would do for me. But before I arrived home that evening from practice, Mr. Hospers had already called my parents on a landline, of course. Back in those days, we had a little phone. It was in a box. It was either attached to a wall, it was put on a table, and it had a long cord. It could only go about 10 or 20 feet. So you had to make work of calling people. Mr. Hospers made work of calling my parents. When I walked in the door, my parents informed me that I would, in fact, be speaking in chapel, and 2 weeks later, I was trembling and sweating profusely as I stammered my way through my speech. I'll tell you that because admittedly today I feel some of those same emotions. This is a wonderful place, and I hold Western Christian in very high regard. I appreciated Western Christian after I graduated. I really love that my children graduated from here, but as I move into the latter stages of my life, I know that Western Christian will become a much more important place than ever before to families who come behind it. I'm just very humbled and grateful to be with you here this morning, and our time will be brief. I promise you I will not overtalk, but I am grateful for everything that Western Christian is and everything that Western Christian stands for. I want to begin by just simply asking, what is your story? What is your story? See, once upon a lifetime, I was a high school social studies teacher. I enjoy hearing people's stories. I love hearing their backgrounds, and I like knowing how they are becoming the person that God intends for them to be. You've probably noticed over time that how we track history, how we log, how we recall, our stories have changed. However, how we look at history today really has not. And I hope you've had the privilege of sitting down with your parents or grandparents and sifting through old photos. I remember doing that once, many times really, when my grandparents were still alive. And I appreciated the stories that they would share after they peered in, they looked at the photos, and they were able to recall when and where a particular photo took place. Invariably, I would ask them, did you ever have fun when you were growing up? Because if you look at most old black and white photos, they're pretty serious. Rarely did you ever see someone photobombing or looking silly in an old black and white photo. It just didn't happen. Those old photos were meant to tell a story. They weren't meant to evaporate or cease to exist after a short period of time, much like Snap does today. People took photos intending to preserve stories. Often, those old pictures tell a story of commitment, of love, and of sacrifice. Don't you chuckle at people when they whip out their phones, they start taking pictures, they start filming people, and you know they're never going to go back to those again. I've done it many times, but it happens. People lose sight of the moment, they take pictures, they film stories, it goes into their phone, never to be seen again. Several weeks ago, I was in Shields in Minneapolis. Caleb had to do some last-minute shopping for college, and he allowed me to tag along, probably so that I could pay for it, but I didn't care because I got to spend more time with him, so we both won. But as we were checking out, as we were leaving, we noticed that Carlos Correa, all-star shortstop for the Minnesota Twins, was checking out. And nearby, people were covertly taking pictures. You know, they were trying to dodge behind other people, get a shot of them. They were ducking between aisles, taking another shot of them. And you know, these guys were going back and they were telling their buddies, hey, I got a picture of Carlos Correa checking out, buying his fishing pole, buying a fishing pole that day. After challenging Caleb 5 times and giving him a good shove in the back, he finally stumbled over to Carlos Correa. And they visited for a few minutes. And it was good on Carlos Correa to give a kid a few minutes of his time. The next time Carlos Correa boots a grounder or strikes out, Caleb knows that there's a human behind that uniform. But a picture of the backside of Carlos Correa, it would have gone into the folder, it would have gone into the trash. But for Caleb now, there's a story behind that. And while we're talking about cell phones, kudos to you, Western Christian, for getting on the right side of history and being on a curve by going phone free. We're going to see in the future that there are many schools who do what you are doing. But what I love and appreciate most about folks from my parents' and grandparents' era is that they are more concerned about being interested than being interesting. They're more concerned about being interested than being interesting. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from that today. They built their stories and their lives by investing in people and being interested in others, namely their children and grandchildren. And that's their legacy. That's why Western Christian is still thriving after 100 years after it was launched. What a wonderful testimony of covenantal Christian education and faithfulness that we see being played out here today. As Christians, we need to work diligently to ensure that our story intersects with God's story. And yet, this is really difficult because our society is so counterculture to that. The mantra of God, others, and ourselves is not something that we see. We live in a time, we live in an era of self-promotion and brand identity, particularly on social media. And to be clear, social media oftentimes is really geared towards young people, right? That's the connotation, that when we talk about social media, it's your age. But I will tell you that adults have led very poorly in this regard, and I'm sorry we have not served you better in this way. We're trying. But I want to revisit those photos or those stories of yesteryear that tell a story of commitment, of sacrifice, and love. We believe that God owns every square inch of this earth, and we believe that He is sovereign over all. Therefore, it's not by chance that you are here at Western Christian. Someone has committed to you receiving a Christian education, and the importance of that cannot be lost. In a day when it's tempting to live in a larger house, or drive a nicer vehicle, or live a little bit more lavishly, someone decided that your eternity was their priority. An occasional thank you from you goes more than you know. But I pray that one day your story also has your children being in a Christian school. But going forward, as your story unfolds, are you able, I hope and pray you are able, every 3 or 4 months to look back, to reflect, and see that you have tangibly grown socially, emotionally, and spiritually. It's hard to see that in the day-to-day grind. What you are doing, living day to day, it is difficult to see it. But hopefully you can pause and take time to reflect every 3 to 4 months and ask yourself, how have I grown? I'm really envious of those people who are able to journal every day and log their thoughts and feelings and then are able to look back. You people are really organized and you're really ahead of the curve as well. Just as important, I hope that your story illustrates that you are taking calculated risks that make you uncomfortable. Graduates will tell you their greatest regret is what they never did. Stay busy, empty your tank emotionally for the sake of the kingdom and for others. I hope that your story illustrates that you failed at something that you enjoy. Failure makes you battle-tested and prepares you for what God has in store for you. Failure makes you evaluate what is important to you. It helps you eliminate clutter in your life. Find something to engage in that you're not that good at and push yourself to failure. Your story is largely unwritten, with God occupying the first chapter, with others occupying the second chapter. You have the makings of a beautiful book written by the author and finisher of our faith, Jesus. As I wind down, a few thoughts. Like your teachers, I am privileged to work alongside young people every day. I'm more convinced than ever that students today are far more equipped to be agents of change and God followers than those before them. You have more education than any teenagers in world history. You are taught to think more creatively and challenged to dream at a deeper level than any of us adults ever were. Just think about that. Western Christian has had over 100 years of graduates, and you are better educated than any graduates that have ever gone before you. Take confidence in that and go thrive. I have 4 little grandkids, ages 1, 2, 3, and 4, not all by the same mother. Those little rascals live in Sioux County, Iowa. Us old people are counting on you to make sure that Western Christian is still the same place in 15 years for them that it is for you today. Some of you will teach them. Some of you will be board members. Some of you will be their Sunday school teachers. Some of you will be ambassadors in the community. You will leave behind your legacy in that regard. But if God is writing your story, I have no doubt that you will be able to deliver on that. Students, thank you. Thank you for helping make Western Christian a special place. Have a wonderful, wonderful homecoming week. You are dismissed to have a great day. Thank you.